So guys, now I'm going to explain and demonstrate a little bit about trend lines. Now this is simply the simple version which I'm drawing on the charts, so you can guys understand the ideology behind it, and then I'll give you examples in front of the charts. So trend lines are going to be following up from the higher highs and higher lows and lower highs that we did in the last video. So you can spot them quite simply. Here is, for example, higher high, here is your higher low, higher high, higher low. So what we're going to do is now we're going to try and draw a trend line, which is one line. Now, if you consider support resistance is basically horizontal and sideways, or support and resistance is a diagonal version of the same thing. So all we're trying to draw right now is to the upside is a level of support underneath the price. And of course, if it was going downwards, we want to try and draw a support resistance above it so the price can be bouncing off it. And over here, we're bouncing to the upside. Simple as that. A line underneath because the trend is going up. But this is what a lot of people do wrong, and I think it's quite important to show you why it's wrong. A lot of people will see a lot of price action and they'll try and draw their trend line just basically an average through the price like that. Now this is a mistake I've seen happen for many years, and because of this, people don't have any rules of when they're trying to find a trade from this trend line, because the trend lines look different every time they draw it. So one important rule, which I'll explain in a minute, will keep your trend lines looking nice and sharp and smart and efficient, most importantly. So here, another upside trend. Again, we can start to draw the higher highs here and higher lows there if you wanted to, and here's some more. But what we're going to try and do is from point number one, we're going to draw exactly to point number two. So like that. So that is point number one and point number two. And as you can see, it looks way more professional than this one over here. So point number one, point number two. Now, I feel like, and a lot of traders also agree, you need point number two to actually begin the trend. So what you don't want to do is just see a lot of price action and then just try to draw it early. Get point number one, get your second higher low as well. And then as we go to the upside, you can draw this straight across. And so point number one starts it, point number two is where we can actually officially draw the trend line, and point number three is this area right here. Point number three, this is often our execution point when it comes to trends, because this is where we get to capture if this thing is going to start to go to the upside and we can potentially stay in this trade for a few days or even longer, then we want to try and get as early as we can. So point number three is where we can actually look at the third point. You can combine candles with this. You can kind of, apply some moving average stuff. You can apply anything that you would want that will give you another reason to enter off point number three. And I'll explain this in front of the charts in a lot more detail. You could be drawing fib levels, anything you want, but point number three on that trend line. And then price will go up, and then it might make a fourth bounce on that trend line. Now you guys might be thinking, why doesn't it look as neat as this? Well, because of price. Remember, this is a level of support that it's going to come down on a lower time frame. This thing might be faking out to the downside, but then it goes back up, comes back down, and it might be faking that to the downside, but then it goes back up. So we're overlooking at much more of a higher time frame. Sometimes trend lines are better on a weekly and a daily time frame, by the way. You can draw them on a 4-hour, but often they're going to look a lot like the daily ones as well. So we don't want to go too low when it comes to finding our first ever trend lines. There's a thing called counter trend lines, which I'll show you in front of the charts, which we can hop down to a 4 hours or 2 hour, but most likely weekly and daily on this stuff. So on a lower time frame, you're going to see a lot of price action there. Because we're viewing this on the daily, price go back up. And then eventually, the price can sometimes continue to bounce off this trend line for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, eventually then breaking and snapping to the downside. And so trend lines are really good for us to help us find entries, sometimes a few different entries, but also when the price does break, can help us see when the reversal might be happening. And that's as simple as the actual theory of trend lines is, which I'm now going to explain to you in front of the charts and show you various different examples, which I hope you guys make screenshots of and apply to your trading. In this video, I'm going to be following up on trend lines, how to draw them, and just your first ever introduction to what they mean for us. So over here, I have GBP/AUD, as you can see here, on a daily time frame. And trend lines, we're going to go a little bit more advanced in the future videos. But again, for keeping it simple, baby steps, here we go. So I'll get rid of these as well, just so it keeps it dead simple. So we have a blank chart in front of us, GBP AUD. So from the previous video, I was plotting on them higher highs and higher lows. And it's essential to try and spot which kind of trend we're in. As you can see here, we're in a nice little uptrend going from December all the way to March. So there's quite a lot of good price action over a good duration. And how we could have been helped, on top of spotting those higher highs and higher lows, the best thing for us to do is go over here, go to our Trendline tool. Now, again, there's many different ways you can draw them on, and I explained on the board a little bit about how we draw them on. But you're going to obviously play around a little bit. First, you might try and draw it on from here. Then you're going to go, you know what? Doesn't really make the most perfect sense. So let me try and move it and adjust it to maybe here. And remember, I told you, point number one, and then go point number two. Point number two, we'll always want to be a little bit strict. So I draw point number two right there. So you can see point number one, point number two. And then point number three here is execution. And that's it. It's as simple as that, guys. Drawing on from point number one, point number two, the market is in an uptrend market, so that's why we're drawing it, the trend line from here to the upside. We always want to try and draw it below the price. Why don't we want to try and draw it on top of? Because we are in the uptrend, we're trying to find buy positions, which means that we want to try and use this as a level of support. So that would have been my level of support. And from here, what we could have done is go to a lower time frame. So I've drawn this on the daily. Let's go to the 4 hour. Let's find that price. Hopefully we find it very quickly. There you go. And now you can see in a lot more detail how that trend line would have helped us for quite a duration of time. So point number one, this, you can smooth it up. It doesn't really mean the end of the world. As you can see, it's all pretty much the same thing. So let me just try and stretch it up there. So point number one, point number two, price then came up, and then look then, a little while later, so you have to be quite patient, so pretty much once you draw them on, you can keep them on, like I said. But point number three came, and that would have been your perfect time to enter this trade. And in a future video, I'm going to obviously explain candlesticks in a little bit more detail, but this would have been an example of a nice bullish engulfing. So this candlestick engulfed this one, and this could have been where you start to try and look at an entry. And of course, your entry is going to be to the upside, because that's why we're in an uptrend. And this trend line has basically helped you get that entry on the third point. Now here, we've been quite fortunate. Prices come up, bounce back down. We could have re-entered then because you got another nice little bullish engulfing candlestick. Again, candlesticks I'll explain in a future video. But then over the next few months, you had multiple times you could have entered this trade. And if you look at this opportunity here, now I'm not really going to try and draw too many lines on here to confuse you guys. But what's going to come after a higher high and a higher low, a new higher high? What would that meant? That would have meant your target could have been higher than this point. Now, so what we can do is go to our tool just over here and measure it, price range. So if we would have got entry, let's say even here, and we would have pushed the upside, you're talking a massive, massive trade right now. So, as you can see, you could have maybe carried this on, and this could have been a plus 500 pip move to the upside. Not saying to catch all of that, most likely you won't, but you could have aimed for it to be higher than this point. So it could have been maybe even here. So you are basically capitalizing on the trend line with the trend going up and knowing that it's going to form a new higher high. And when the price comes, let's say here again, and you could have drawn another one on. So let's try and say price range again. I hate this color, but we'll continue. So it would have formed a new higher high past this one. So you could have had your entry there. Now, yes, it did go up and come back down, but that's a part of the game. It's never going to work out absolutely perfectly. And our goal is to be very aware of that and be very patient when entering these trades. So point number three, good trade, come back down, bounced again, could have been a potential entry, And except you could miss this one and then capture this one because it's the same level of support, and that would have been a good trade to the upside as well. And eventually that trendline course is going to break. But as you can see what happened, the price on this opportunity over here broke below, but then used that same level of support as resistance now. So remember I talked about in a video where the floor becomes the roof. So this opportunity here, the floor became the roof, and the price then changed direction. And that as simple as it is, guys, for anybody that wants to try and draw trend lines on. There's a nice example here. Of course, you can draw them to the downside as well. Let me try and see if I can find a nice example for you. So I'll keep this one on for now. I'll make it a little bit smaller. So over here, you guys might have spotted it as well. I can see some nice price action to to the downside. So let's draw it from here, over there, and there you go. Look how simple that was. I went straight from an uptrend straight to a nice downtrend where I can see a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. And what could I have done? The exact same thing I've just drawn on for you here. Point number 3 would have been an execution. So you've got point number 1, point number 2, point number 3. That's your sell opportunity right there. And I'm going to try and use this tool, but I'm going to try and change color. Where is it? There it is. So point number 3 here, and there you go. So you could have tried to look for a short opportunity on here. Now, for anybody that, again, knows my candlesticks, this is a nice evening star formation. Point number 3, our target is going to be lower than this one, so we can just throw something out there. And how many pips is this? Again, I should have used the tool. This is a nice 400 pip trade to the downside. Point number 3 spotted perfectly. What happened then? Point number 4, it also fell. So you've got, I'll try and use the ellipse tool a little bit. Oops, this one here. I always get these confused, so I don't use them much in my own trading nowadays anyway. I used to use them a lot. So there is your point number 3 on that trend line, and there's point number 4. And then eventually, as I told you, it's not going to last forever, but this is a good period of time. And then it broke up, and you could then try and spot some more on. But there's a good example of, actually what I'll do is I'll get rid of these, and then I'm going to zoom out for you guys on a daily. And for anybody that is curious about trend lines, point number 3 there, point number 3 there, and practice with them, practice, practice, practice. And I'm going to show you one more on USD CAD. We can take a screenshot of this right now. USD CAD, another nice one setting up. So what I've drawn a little bit of a support and resistance on, but I'll just get rid of it for this video. I'll leave this one on. But point number 1, point number 2 is point number 3 right now. So it's quite exciting to see what's going to happen next. So if the trend follows, what I'm going to try and do is point number 3 here. That could be a potential entry. The only reason I'm waiting is because I feel like it might break this trend line, which happens, you know, a lot of the time. It's nothing guaranteed. Our job is to basically monitor and execute when we see it. So point number 3 there, and if it continues, we're going to try and look for a bigger high than this, and this could be our target up here. That's trend lines. Simple as that. Thank you very much. Actually, before I go, I might try and also find counter trend lines for you guys. I could leave it in another video, but I'll try and use it now. So what counter trend lines are, guys, is an opportunity where you can see the price is going up in price here. So what we can do is draw a trend line, a very small one in the opposite direction on a lower time frame. So I might have found this trend line on a weekly or daily, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a counter trend line there. I'll make a different color just for now. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Because the same way this is a support, it's the same way we're drawing a mini resistance on the price here. And what we can do is all that pressure that's kind of building up here, we see it power through, and it helps us get that refined entry even further. Now this counter trend line and all counter trend lines I draw on quite messy, because you don't have to stick as accurate as the overall trend, which is this one. This is called a counter trend. So by drawing that there, the prices then broke up and we've managed to capture, okay, boom. That's where there's a lot of momentum to the upside. That's our entry. And counter trend lines are there quite a lot in trading. And guess what? Let's just clone this. Sorry. Clone this. And where can I draw one now? Pretty much there. There's a counter trend line right there building up. And all I've done is going to come the opposite way to my overall trend. And possibly, if this thing breaks up to the upside, that counter trend line worked for me as well. So counter trend lines will go the other way on top of the original trend lines. And over here, I've got quite a few counter trend lines for you drawn on. So if you use this as an example here, the overall trend is which way? It's going down, isn't it? So we could have got a trend line tool and try to draw some downwards momentum here. I've reversed the colors, let me just fix them. And then these could be our counter trend lines. So, yep, it's all about finding the overall direction and then taking advantage of, okay, how can we refine that entry? And I'm not really using many tools here, just simple price action. And yeah, I'm just trying to spot where I could have improved my entry in the best direction. So overall trend line, counter trend line, counter trend line, counter trend line. And so this will be a good opportunity for me to catch the momentum, boom, boom, and then boom. And many opportunities like this, guys. And practice makes perfect, and I will be explaining these in future videos. So thank you for watching.